Ghosts and ghouls, demons and aliens, monsters and worse, only here on Ghost or What, the best channel for original scary stories. Our next story is Boy Haunted in the Hostel. A whole year had passed by, and there was still no clue about Alexa. I could not explain to anyone how I felt upon losing a sister dog. It was the most painful thing that had ever happened to me. I never told anyone, but since that incident, I had been hearing voices everywhere. Everyone kept asking me what happened to me that night, but I never told anyone. I always replied that I had forgotten, because what happened that night was too painful to remember. I wanted to forget everything, which is why when I started college, I stopped seeing them. I got admission to a college that was on the other side of the country. But unfortunately, those voices never stopped. After getting admission to the college, I had a new friend. He was my roommate as well. His name was Jackson. Jackson was very fun-loving and daredevil. He kept reminding me of Alexa. It seemed like he was the male version of Alexa. That might have been the reason as well that I was inclined towards him. Luckily, we had the same subjects as well, so I did not have to make any more friends. I used to feel scared around the crowd. I'd even used to sit at the back of the class, where very few students used to sit. One night, I was lying on the bed, trying to fall asleep, when I felt as if someone had walked past the bathroom door. My eyes were wide open and I knew something was up. I felt terrified. My heart started to race and my hands were trembling. I covered myself inside the sheets. I could still see shadows from underneath the sheet. I started shivering, and I did not realize when I started crying. I was screaming and crying. All of a sudden, someone pulled the sheets off me, and I started screaming frantically. Then someone started to shake me, and then I realized it was Jackson. He hugged me and stopped me from trembling. Once I felt a little calm, he asked me what had happened. I remained silent, so he asked again. He kept on insisting, so I finally opened up. I told him about the shadows and the voices I kept hearing. He asked me what had happened that night. I knew that there was no hope of safety, so it was better to tell someone about that. I told him about how we went hiking, and then we got lost, and a while ago I was walking with my friends and suddenly there was no one. I was standing in an abandoned place. There was a huge building that I could not recognize. Then suddenly I saw a man approaching me. When he came closer, I realized he did not have eyes. There were empty sockets, and then people kept coming towards me with no eyes, and there were loud sounds of chanting. Then after a while, the people got more horrific. Some were laughing with their long teeth, while others had nobody until I fainted. And since then, I keep hearing those chanting whenever I try to sleep. I told him. Did you ever tell anyone about the building? He asked. I shook my head. You should. We should get a picture, and then we will figure out everything. The next day, Jackson took me to one of his friends who was getting a degree in arts. I described the building, and then he made a rough design of the building. When I looked at it, my eyes got widened with fear, as it was the same building. Suddenly the chanting got louder than ever. My head started throbbing, and the painting dropped from my hand. Then, like it started, suddenly everything went silent. When I opened my eyes, Jackson's friend was looking at me like I was insane and Jackson was bent down over me. I looked at both of them. They stood up and ran away from there. I did not talk about the building for the rest of the week. Luckily, I did not hear anything as well. I thought it might be gone. But later that week while I was sleeping, I had the strangest dream. I saw that I was standing in the same place in front of the building when I saw those eyeless figures again. The strange thing was that I saw Jackson there as well. I could not see much as his back was towards me. Suddenly, I felt as if someone was shaking me and I woke up. As I opened my eyes, I found no one. Jackson was sleeping, and there was pitch darkness. I kept up all night, looking at the shadows of people wandering inside my room. The next day when we woke up, I told Jackson that his life was also in danger and told him about my dream. He assured me that I am just overreacting and nothing will happen. We decided to find out more about the picture. So after the classes, we started to check for different abandoned buildings, but could not find the required one. Days went by, and we were still unable to figure out about the building, and I started to wonder if it was just a building in my head and nothing extraordinary. One day, while I was walking down the hall in my hostel, I realized that everything had become deserted. I stopped at my place and wondered where everyone was. I looked around me and there was absolutely no one. I started panicking and started running toward my room. Suddenly, I saw someone standing at some distance. I felt a little relieved, but as he turned around, my eyes could not believe it. It felt as if my worst nightmare had come to life. I stepped back a little as I saw the man grinning. He had no eyes, just empty sockets. As I moved back a little, someone grabbed me from behind, and as I turned around, another one of them. And one after another, I was surrounded by hundreds of those creatures. It felt like I was in the same place once again. They kept coming toward me and I could not understand what to do. My heart was racing and my legs were shivering. I wanted to run away, but it felt like my feet were glued to the ground. They were coming nearer and nearer, and then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes again, I realized that I was lying in my room. At that point, I was terrified and could not decide what to do. One day, while I was walking toward my classes, I accidentally dropped my file and all the papers were scattered everywhere. I bent down to pick them up when a boy came forward to help me. "Where did you get this?" he asked as he picked the paper with the drawing of the building. "You know this place?" I asked him. "Oh yes," he replied, and my throat went dry. "This is the building that used to be here when the hostel was not built." "What do you mean?" I asked. "There used to be an asylum before our hostel, and people claim that some doctors used to perform some experiments there, and some even claim that they even took out their eyes from the sockets." He completed and moved away. "How do you know?" I asked. "Jackson, he knew so much about ancient places," he replied and left. As I turned around, I saw Jackson with the most terrific expressions. He was grinning and moving towards me as I looked around. The same eyeless creatures were approaching me. Did you think that was the end? The terror never ends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more horror stories, only on Ghost or What.